Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from 10th group. We will present about main issues on partial theories of translation studies. Let me introduce myself and my partner. My name is Maula Afiyah Balqisani and my partner is Lailatul Fajariyah and Siti Mustikaweni Nursanjaya Rahayu. Okay, the context of this presentation. The first is partial theories of translation. The second is development since the 1970. The third is the Van Dorsler's map. And the last is discipline, interdiscipline, or multidiscipline. The first presenter will discuss about the partial theories of translation and development since the 1970 that will deliver by Lailatul Fajariyah. Time is yours.
Okay. Partial theories of translation restricted according to the subdivisions. The first is medium restricted theories, subdivided according to translation by machine and humans, with further subdivisions according to whether the machine or computer is working alone or as an aid to the human translator, to whether the human translation is written or spoken, and to whether spoken translation or interpreting is consecutive or simultaneous. And the second is area restricted theories, are restricted to specific languages or group of languages and or cultures. Holmes notes that languages restricted theories are closely related to work in contrastive linguistic and stylistic. And the third is rank restricted theories, are linguistic theories that have been restricted to a level of normally the word of sentence or sentence. At the time Holmes was writing, there was already a trend towards text linguistics, in example analysis at the level of the text, which has since become far more popular. And the next is text type restricted theories. Look at these course types and genres. Example, literary, business, and technical translation. Text type approach came to prominence with the work of Race and Vermeer, among others, in the 1970s. And the next is the term time restricted is self-explanatory, referring to theories and translation limited according to specific time frames and periods. The history of translation falls into this category. And the next is, for the last, is problem restricted theories, can refer to certain problems such as equivalence, or to a wider questions of whether so-called universals of translation exist. Okay, the next is the applied branch of Holmes framework concern application to the practice of translation. First, translation training, teaching methods, testing technique, curriculum designs. And the second is translation aids, such as dictionaries and grammars. And the last is translation criticism, the evaluation of translation, including the marking of student translation and the reviews of published translation. Another area Holmes mentioned is translation policy, where he sees the translation scholar advising on the place of translation in society. This should include what place, if any, it should occupy in the language teaching and learning curriculum. There are drawbacks to the structure. The division in the map as a whole are in many ways artificial, and Holmes himself pointed out that the descriptive and applied areas do influence one another. The main merit of the divisions is, as Story state, that they allow a clarification and a division of labor between the various areas of translation studies which in the past have often been confused. The divisions are still flexible enough to incorporate developments such as the technological advance of recent years. And you can see in the slide there are the applied branch of translation studies. Okay, the next is the fact that Helmut devote two-thirds of his attention to the pure aspect of theory and description surely indicates his research interest rather than a lack of possibilities for the applied side. Translation policy is nowadays far more likely to be related to the ideology, including language policy and hegemony, that determines translation than was the case in Holmes' description. An inclusion of interpreting as a subcategory of human translation would also be disputed by many scholars. In view of the very different requirements and activities associated with interpreting, and despite inevitable points of overlap, it would probably be best to consider interpreting as a parallel field under the title of interpreting studies. And audiovisual translation and sign language interpreting might claim similar status. Additionally, Holmes' map omits any mention of the individuality of the style, decision making, and working practice of human translator involved in the translation process. Yet it was precisely the split between theory and practice that Holmes himself of both a literary translator and a researcher sought to overcome. Okay, the next slide is developments since the 1970s. Research in translation studies since the 1970s has seen different areas of Holmes' map come to the fore. Contrastive linguistics generally fell by the wayside, but he resurfaced thanks to the advance in corpus-based studies. The linguistic-oriented science of translation has continued strongly in Germany, but the concept of equivalence associated with it has been questioned and reconceived. Germany has seen the rise of theories centered around text type and text purpose. The Halidian influence of discourse analysis and systematic functional grammar, which view language as a communicative act in sociocultural context, came to prominence in the early 1990s, especially in Australia and the UK. And the late 1970s and the 1980s also saw the rise of a descriptive approach that had its origins in comparative literature and Russian formalism. A pioneering center was Tel Aviv, where Itamar Ibn Zohar and Gideon Toury pursued the idea of the literary polysystem in which among other things, different literatures and genres, including translated and non-translated works, compete for dominance. The Polysystemist worked with a Belgium-based group including Jos Lambert and the late André Lefevre, who subsequently moved to the University of Austin, Texas, and with the UK-based scholar Susan Basnet and Theo Hermans. A key volume was the collection of essays edited by Hermans, The Manipulation of Literature, Studies in Literary Translation, which gave rise to the name of the manipulation school. Basnet and Lefevre's volume Translation, History and Culture then introduced the term culture turn. This dynamic, culturally oriented approach held sway for much of the following decade. And the next is the 1990s saw the incorporation of new approach and concept, Canadian-based translation and gender research led by Sherry Simon, the Brazilian Cannibalist School promoted by Els Pereira, and postcolonial translation theory with the prominent figures of the Bengali scholar Tejaswini Niranjana and Gayatri Spivak. In the USA, the culture studies oriented analysis of Lawrence Venuti called for greater visibility and recognition of the translator. And the last, developments continued at a fast pace in the new millennium, with special interest devoted to translation, globalization, and resistance, the sociology and historiography of translation, translator training, and process-oriented research activity, as well as the practice of translation, has also been revolutionized by new technologies. This new area include audiovisual translation, localization, and corpus-based translation studies.
Okay, the second presenter will deliver by Maula Afiyah Balqisani. Time is yours. Okay, the Van Dorsler's map. A new conceptual tool was developed for the Benjamin's Translation Studies bibliography as explained by Van Dorsler. In the new maps, a distinction is drawn between translation and translation studies, reflecting the different center of interest of research. In the new map is subdivided into the first is lingual mode, for example, interlingual and intralingual. The second is media, for example, print, audiovisual, and electronic. The third is mode, for example, covert or overt translation, direct or indirect translation, mother tongue or other tongue translation, pseudo translation, retranslation, self-translation, and side translation. The last is field, for example, political, journalistic, technical, literary, religious, scientific, and commercial. Translation studies is subdivided into the first is approach, for example, cultural approach and linguistic approach. The second is theories, for example, general translation theories and polysystem theories. The third is research method, for example, descriptive and empirical. And the last is applied translation studies, for example, criticism, didactic, and institutional environment. This consists of strategies, procedure or technique, error, rule or norm, or conversion or law or universal and translation tool. The distinction is an important one, even if sometimes poor in the literature. A strategy is the overall orientation of translated text, while a procedure is a specific technique used at given point in a text. The last presenter will deliver by Siti Mustikaweni Nursanjaya Rahayu. Time is yours.
Discipline, interdiscipline, or multidiscipline. Referring to Willard McCarty's paper entitled Humanities Computing as Interdiscipline, an interdiscipline therefore challenged the current conventional way of thinking by promoting and responding to new links between different types of knowledge and technologies. Viewing the hierarchy of disciplines as a systemic order, McCarthy sees the conventional discipline having either a primary or a secondary relationship to a new interdiscipline. It has the potential for a primary relationship with disciplines such as first, linguistics, especially semantics, pragmatics, applied and contrastive linguistics, cognitive linguistics, and the second, modern languages and language studies, and then comparative literature, cultural studies, including gender studies and post-colonial studies, and the last, philosophy of language and meaning, including hermeneutic and deconstruction and ethics. In recent years, with sociology, history, and creative writing, some current projects are also multidisciplinary, involving the participation of researchers from various disciplines, including translation studies. It is important to point out that the relationship of translation studies to other disciplines is not fixed. Specialized translation courses should have an element of instruction in the disciplines in which the trainees are planning to translate, such as law, politics, medicine, finance, science, as well as an ever-increasing input from information technology to cover computer-assisted translation. Translation studies has in some places been colonized by language departments driven by the perceived attractiveness of academic teaching, programs centered on the practice of translation but harboring their own academic prejudice. Ironically, this has also worsened the artificial gap between practice and theory. Over time, the interdisciplinarity of the subject has become more evident and recent. Developments have seen increased specialization and the continued importation of theories and models from other disciplines. And that's all for our presentation. Thanks for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.